Welcome to this edition of As Simple as That. It's November 1st here in Iowa, and we just had our second hard frost of the year. So even though the grass is still green, our first snow is probably not far off. So I dug out my snowblower and I thought, time to call the local dealer to come pick it up and get it tuned up for the year. But I thought, heck, I ought to be able to do that. So today I'm going to walk you through my simple steps to get your snowblower ready for the season. I'm even going to try to tackle a couple where you got to pull off a panel and grease some gears. So this could be an interesting one. So stay tuned. We're ready to get your snowblower ready for this year's winter. Okay, I brought it back in from running for about 5 minutes. Before we get into draining the oil, I thought I'd show you some of the stuff we're going to use doing this. As you can see back here, I've got an oil pan and a funnel that I'll use for draining the oil and putting the new oil back in the snowblower. Then I've got my glasses here, my readers, so I can see what I'm doing. And then I have Valvoline synthetic oil, 5W30. Read up on the Aaron's book, and they said to use synthetic oil and that particular weight, so went out and bought some at Lowe's. And I also bought this Blaster white lithium grease. And essentially, when we get into the servicing of the gear and the chain, I can use that to spray it on the chain to allow it to soak in and keep the gear and chain lubricated during the winter. And I'll also put it on some of the exposed metal parts just for protection against rust. And then you see here, here's the grease gun I've got, and we'll go around and hit all the grease zerks that are on the machine. Over here is a socket wrench and another wrench that I'll use to pull this bar off. And you can see also the new scraper bar that I purchased that I'll replace the one that's on the snowblower. And finally, you can't have enough rags. So got actual rag for cleaning dirt and dust away, a bunch of paper towels, and when in doubt, go to the paper towel rack over the sink where I've got plenty of degreaser for my hands. Okay, let's get this process started. Maybe a little bit about what we're going to do today. The first thing is we're going to get the snowblower running. Normally not a big deal, but since this has been sitting for over 6 months and I did not put any additive in the fuel tank, could be a chance that the gas isn't any good. However, one of the key things that I've learned in the last couple of years is only use non-ethanol gas. So I used a premium unleaded when I filled this up last winter. So the gas that's in there was the good stuff. Now, whether or not it's still good stuff, we'll find out. The other alternative is to put some additive in when you fill up the tank before you shut the thing down for the winter, so it allows that gas with additive to flow through the system. So that'll be our first thing. We'll go through getting that set up. Next, once we take it outside after it's warmed up, or after it's running, to warm it up. So then when we can bring it back in, we'll drain the oil out of the system and then fill it up with new synthetic oil. After we finish that, we'll go to greasing the zerks that are around the vehicle in different places by the tires and in the auger area, just to make sure that we have good lubrication to all the moving joints. The fourth thing we'll do is the optional, I don't think I thought I'd ever do this, but I'm going to portion, and that's to remove the service panel, which I'll point out here. You set this down here. It's this panel here. And when you remove that, you get exposure to the gears and the chain drive that turns the wheels and also turns the auger. And we'll spray some grease on there to keep those parts well lubricated, and also some of the bare spots that are exposed to all the snow and wetness. We'll put some grease on those just to keep it from rusting. So that will be the next thing we'll do. And then finally, we're going to get into the adjustments of the front here, particularly, and hopefully you can see this. These skids will have to adjust, but before we do that, if you look closely, you can see a scraper bar way down at the bottom here. This bar here, you can see on mine, or maybe you can't, but all the metal has been rolled up along that edge just from scraping on the concrete. I purchased a new one, and so what we're going to do is take this bar off and put the new one on and then adjust it so it's just barely above the ground when the vehicle's moving. And then we'll have to come back and adjust these to compensate for the new bar that's been put in there. So that's our project for the day. I should add that this is Aaron's 28-inch width, 21-inch height, deluxe 28 they call it. And I've had this since, I believe it's 2012. And the way I found that out, and it's kind of hard to see here, but we'll see if we can zoom in on it. This is the serial tag. And if you look above the number 084539, it says USA 2012. So had this thing quite a while. It's been a godsend here living in Iowa when we have the big snows, because it goes through just about anything. And people have asked me, how do you keep it so new looking? Well, if you take care of these things and take a few minutes at the end of the season and the beginning of the season to clean things off and lubricate it, and occasionally send it to the dealer for their overview and adjustments, these things will last you for quite a long time. So there you go. Let's now get this thing outside and see if we can get the engine started and get it warmed up. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I make sure that the gas is on. Turn the key over to start. Put the choke all the way on, and then I prime this so I can see if we can get some gas going into that. Now I've got the throttle about mid-throttle. I'm going to pull it all the way up, and we're going to give it a shot. So I'm going to let this run about 5 minutes just to get the oil warmed up inside, which will make changing the oil easier. All right, I've let the snowblower run for 5 minutes outside to get the oil nice and warmed up. So now what we want to do is remove the cap, this right here, off of the drain line from the engine. Now I've loosened this already, but to be safe, if you've got one that hasn't been removed for a while, you want to grab the tube with some clamps as you turn this cap. So I'm not going to do that since I've already loosened the cap. So get that on, give it a slight turn here. It's loosened up, and so what I'll do, and I've got the drain pan below it. I'll let the oil drip there. I'll set the cap in there. And then one thing I learned in YouTube videos is to get a couple blocks of wood and set those underneath the housing to tilt the engine a little bit to allow the oil to drain faster. So I don't know if you can see this, but I'm slipping these under the skid plates on both sides. And that should let the oil drain a little bit faster. So I'll let this drain, and then we'll come back and put the cap back on and fill it up with some oil. Okay, it's just about drained. One thing I learned while I was watching this is I'm now tilting the snowblower, got my hands on the handle, and I'm just tilting it back. And that also helps the oil drain out a little bit faster. You can see we're getting down to the end there. So I'm going to set this back down on the wood blocks. And I'm going to go grab a paper towel. Now here's clean that off the end here. Now you can see I screwed up by dropping the cap down in the oil draining pan. more oil in there than I thought there was, so I've got to clean that off. Take a paper towel or a rag, whatever you got. And I see it's still dripping, so I'm going to tilt the snowblower a little bit more and see if we can get that out of there as well. All right, so we'll wipe the threads off again and slip the cap on and hand tighten it up onto the pipe threads. Clean that off. Also look for any other oil that might have got on here. And now I'm going to get my wrench and tighten it back up. It doesn't have to be real tight, just till you think it's secure, and that way no oil will drip out of it. All right, step one is done. So now what we'll do, move the camera here. What we're going to do now is take this oil filler cap off, unscrew it, take it off, and then wipe it off so we don't have any residue oil on there so you can see what you're doing. We set that aside for right now. And then I'm going to grab this filler funnel to help me pour oil into the container. And I've got this Valvoline Full Synthetic Advanced 5W30. Get the cap off here. And so what you want to do is fill this up in increments and then check it with that dipstick so you know how much you've got. So we'll start here with some oil. This is, let's see how much this is. This is 1 quart, so 32 ounces. Okay, I feel like I've used up about half of it. So what I'm going to do now is take this funnel out. Set that down on the cardboard, and then I'm going to stick the dipstick in. Screw it in here, and then unscrew it. And then we'll look at the dipstick and see, I see oil all the way up to here, but that's still draining down, so we're going to let it set here a second. Let the oil drip down in there so we can get a good reading of what we've got in there. And we're still showing a lot of oil in there, so I'm going to let it, it's dripping down the side of the tube, and so it's getting on the dipstick, so we got to let it settle in the bottom of the snowblower before we go any farther. While we're waiting on that, I thought I'd go ahead and start greasing some things. And there's only a few here on the outside of the snowblower. I'm going to rotate this around a little bit. I don't know if you can see this, but if we go down low, there's a grease zerk right behind this tire. So I'm going to try to get the grease zerk back in there, a little tight fit, but I think you can bend the tube enough. Set that down so I use both hands. Some people will take the tire off to do this. Of course, I don't want to go to all that trouble, so I'm going to fight it. Well, I'm going to get some needle nose pliers here to help me. We'll use some regular pliers. See if I can help slide that on better. Coming in from up here, see if we can do it any bit easier from this direction. Might have been easier to take the tire off. There we go. I hear it snap on. And so then I'll use the grease pump and watch for some grease to start. There we go. It's coming out on the back side. You can't see it there, but that means I've got her filled with grease. Now we'll take this off. All right, and then the only other two that are on the external side of this are in here, and you can see one right here. There's another one on the back side there, so we'll grease those as well. You should clean off those. I've already done that. Clean off the tip so you're not forcing any dirt in there. Here again, we'll start squeezing it. There we go. See, it's coming out around this bolt here. So that's a good sign. I should note while we're here, this bolt and that bolt are shear bolts. So as this thing's turning and if it hits on a rock or something, rather than breaking the shaft, those bolts will shear off. So if you don't have spares, you should probably buy a couple, and you can find those on Amazon as well. But that will stop you in your tracks, and you can't do anything with your snowblower until you fix that. Okay, now come around and try to feel my way onto this back one here. There we go. Oh. There we go. We're on the bottom one here. Do the same squeezing and watch for grease to come out around the bolt here. There we go. We're getting some grease to come out right there, so that's good enough. So that's all the external grease zerks. The one for the other side by the tire is on the inside, and we'll hit that when we remove the service panel on the back. Okay, let's go back to the oil. Look at the filling again. See how our dipstick's doing now. Clean that all off. I guess I should also point out that you want the snowblower on a level surface when you do this. My garage is pretty level, so I'm not worrying about it. Okay, so I'm not seeing any oil yet, so I need to add some more into this. So I'll set that back down. Get my funnel. Whoop, a little grease or oil dripping around there. We'll pour some more in here. And I'm looking on the side of the canister, and it says I'm at 20 ounces, and this is 32 ounces, so I've only got 12 in there, so we'll keep pouring here for a little bit more. All right, we'll let that settle here for a little bit. Grab a couple more paper towels over here, clean up my mess. On the floor here, and some drips on the side of the housing, which Obviously, we'll clean up for good once we're done there. I'm going to take that tube out again. Try it a little different this time and set it down in the cardboard. And so we'll wait here until this drains a little bit more and come back and I'll show you what it looks like to get that done. And at that point, then we can go add the scraper blade on the front and adjust the slide pads on the housing for the snowblower. Okay, I think we got it filled up. I looked at the side of our oil container here and it's saying it's at about 14 ounces left. So that means I put in approximately 18 ounces of oil. So we'll take a look at the dipstick here and see what it says. And it's kind of hard to see, but it's shiny up to this arrow right here. You can still see some oil dripping down the side here. Try one more, wipe it off. Pretty clear there. You look at it, and yes, you can see it's right at this line right there. So that's the max that you want in there, so I think we're good to go. So I'm going to clean up here a little bit, and then we'll remove the service panel on the back and grease the gears and chain. Okay, we got the oil changed, and I cleaned up the mess of the dripping I did. And so now what we're going to do is remove this panel down here to get at the gear and drive chain to grease those up. Now, one tip I would give you is you can try to loosen them while it's sitting like this, but it's really awkward to get to. They suggest, they being Aaron's, to tilt it up on the face of the snow compartment on the front. It's flat surface, so we're going to do that. But one thing they also recommended is you put some kind of saran wrap, or I used a garbage bag or a grocery bag here to keep the oil from leaking out. So that's what that is. So we're going to move this back onto these pads, and then I'm going to tilt this up so it lands on the face of the housing. So 1, 2, 3. Not really too bad, and you just slowly tilt it over until it's on its face, and there you go. So now you can see what we've got to work with a lot better. You've got 2 bolts here, 2 bolts on this side, and we got 1, 2 bolts here. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen those all up. See if I can get this so you can kind of watch. We'll loosen these all up first, then they might all come out a little bit easier. Okay, so let's see if we can take these off. This one's a little stubborn, but it's coming. There we go. And then the last one down here. And we got all 6 of them out, and then Oops, forgot one down here. There we go. Now it should come off. There it is. So we'll take a little look at this. We aren't going to mess with everything in here, but this is the drive belt that runs the high-speed blower at the top that blows the snow out. What we're going to work on is greasing this chain and this gear set here. As you can see, it looks like there's some oil on the rest of it, so we're not going to worry about it. But one thing they said to do is try not to get the grease on the belt, otherwise it'll slip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some paper towels in there. Just to be safe. Set that in there like that. And then I've got this Blaster High Performance Lithium Grease. It's got a little nozzle on it. And so I'm hoping that way I can blast it specifically in areas without blowing it all over everything. So give it a shot here and see what happens. First time with it, so we hope it works. Okay. Put a little bit, come around the other side here, a little bit so you can see it. Kind of hit this chain here. Now it's coming out white. Some on here. And that's probably good enough because as it works around, it will work itself into the other sprockets on the chain. And we'll leave it at that. Now, this is always a good time to look to see if anything looks really worn. Oops, a little grease on that belt. Get that off of there. But other than that, everything looks pretty good. I'm probably due for a new belt. It may have been replaced at one time when I took it in for service. But at this point, that's all we're going to do inside here. So now I'm going to button this back up. And what I'll do is I'll start with the top two so it kind of holds this thing in place. And now I'm going to go down and get the bottom two. Make sure that you jiggle the case around, cover around a little bit so you can line up the holes. Going a lot easier that way. Do this side over here. And just hand tighten them as much as I can. And then the last two. To mess with that one, doesn't feel like the hole is quite lined up. Yeah, I'll mess with this, come around to the other side here and see if I can get this into the hole. There we go. And now we'll tighten these up to make sure they're good and snug. Come down to these side ones. And then the last two over here. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to set this back a little bit. I'm going to take the snowblower and turn it back over. This is a little tricky, just trying to reach the bars, so I basically kind of push down on the wheels to keep it from sliding, and then I grab the handles and just slowly let it back down. And there we go. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do now is work on replacing, let's see if I can show you that again real close, this bar right along there. And to do that, there's 5 bolts that you need to remove. And so I'm going to go ahead and get the new bar, so I've got it handy, but then we'll start taking that off and see what happens. I'm going to take these pieces of wood here and stick them under the sides of the housing, so it gives me a little more freedom to see underneath the bolts as I tighten them up. So basically just lift this up a little bit under the skid there. Do the same thing on this side. And now what I'll do is I'll loosen up, take those bolts or nuts off. This is a 1/2-inch bolt. You gotta be careful here so you don't smash your hands, which I did earlier. And this one's a little tough. I'm going to get an open end wrench for that, since I can't turn the auger. All right, there we go. One nut. Two nuts. 3 nuts. 4 nuts, and then the last one over here now is real tight because I've loosened everything else. Loosen it up a little bit more. There we go, we got them out. Thought I'd show you what's on the back side of these. There's they fit into the square holes on the housing, so that's why you don't have to have a wrench on the backside. And each one of these has one. Now, the other thing that I didn't notice originally, but there are bolts going out the side of the housing, and those go to these skid plates down here. So I'm going to loosen that up. It's a different size, of course. They always change things. So put that on here. And you only have to loosen up this one because that's the only one that's holding the bar on this side. And take those out. And then I'm going to come around to the other side and do the same thing. There we go. So now we can knock these. Oops, I took the wrong ones off. Well, that's no good. So now we got to loosen up the back ones. I'll go ahead and put this back on so the skid pad doesn't fall off. At least I'll remember that next time I do this. And now I'll take off the right one. There we go. And we'll go back to the other side and do it one more time. I'll put this one back on. All right, one more time, we'll loosen this one here. Oops. Got too carried away there. There we go. All right. So now we'll just remove this bar here. We got to get these bolts out of there that we're holding in the I'm being stubborn here, so there's 1, 2, 3. There we go. Nothing like a little brute force to get things to work. So I'm going to get this piece of wood out of the way. And there it is. Now what I want to show you is the edge of this thing. See how much that's worn away? And it's curled back up. So that's the surface that I've been running along my sidewalk and driveway for years. I'll grab the other one over here. It's quite a difference. It's a square edge, so you can see how much was worn off. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this one on, and I'm going to go the same way I did before, starting at the ends. After I slide that up in there. And you can see there's a square hole on this, which holds the bolt. And bring this back around again. You can watch me put that other one in. So put the washer on and the nut. And I'm not going to tighten these tight because we're going to have to adjust that bar. You just get it so you feel like it's, that feels, loosen it up just a tad. Okay. I'll go back over to the other side. There we go. And put the square of the bolt into the square on that piece. Do the same thing on this one. We're just going to get it, oops, get it kind of snugged up. Okay, that feels pretty good. So at this point, I want to get this lowered down to just see how level it is. We'll probably have to do some more adjustment, but I'm going to take those pieces of wood out from under. Get these bolts out of here. Got 2, 3, 4. I'm still missing one here. There it is right there. Got that. We got our 5 nuts. So I'll take the other piece of wood out. And set it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this so that blade is the thickness of these boards I have on the floor. And to do that, I've got to make sure the boards are not on the skid pads on the side. So I'm going to take this one out, and then I'm going to lift up and slide this one over. Actually, I'm going to turn it. I can. Probably easier if I stood up and did this. So lift up on the housing and put it right under the middle of that. And so I don't know if you can see it, but there's light on either of the corners. A little bit more. And so that means there's that much of a space between the ground and that blade. And because I've loosened up these side skid bolts. Loosen those up so this piece is loose enough I can make sure it's not hung up. Do that on the other side too. Come in there and see. So it's basically just resting on that piece of cardboard. So now I'm going to tighten up the two side ones because it's in position. Hold that. Over, do the other side. I won't move the camera for this one. Basically, that will hold that bar in place while I put in all these back in. And to do that, I'm going to put these pieces of wood back under the skids. To give me some room to slip my hand under there. Go ahead and change the head on my socket to the smaller nuts. And what I'll do is I'll put the center one in first. Put the nut on there. I hand tighten that. And I'm going to come over to this side and do the same thing. I don't know if you can see that, but that one. Number 3 over here on the other end. Apologize for getting in front of the camera, but I don't know any good way to get at that. That's number 3. Back over here to number 4. Same thing, oops. Same thing, put another nut on. Okay, and one more to go here. Slip that under. Okay, so we got them all back in, and now we want to go around and tighten them up. And start in the center first. These you want to get pretty tight so they don't work themselves loose while you're hitting things. Like cracks in your driveway and cracks in your sidewalk. And then, let's see, we got all those. Looks like I have them. Now I got to. And the last one I'll do with this wrench. Okay, that's pretty much it. Let's do a few final checks on this. First, we'll get rid of the wood. And cardboard down here. And I'll take a look at this. It's not real easy to see, but if you look real close down there, you can see light coming from underneath the blade that we just installed, and that's just what we wanted. So I think we got that pretty well taken care of. And there you have it, another edition of As Simple as That. Now, this was the first time I've done that, done this maintenance myself. Usually I have a business take care of it, but I thought, what the heck, let's try it. And, you know, it wasn't too bad. A little awkward trying to get at some of the bolts and nuts, but I think now that I've done it once, I've got some ideas of how to make it easier to do. And this will probably become a annual maintenance for me that could save me anywhere from $100 to $200 having someone pick up the snowblower and take it down to their shop. So give it a try. I think you'll be surprised how easy it is. Stay tuned for the next edition of As Simple as That.